clock on the wall says 7 o'clock, so we will begin. Good evening, counselors, staff, the press, presenters, television, and online viewers in Blind River. We begin tonight's meeting with acknowledgement that the land on which we are gathered is the traditional territories of the Anishinaabeg, specifically Mississauga. We would like to acknowledge the North Channel Métis Council. We say miigwech to thank Indigenous people for taking care of this land from time immemorial. We are called to treat this sacred land, its plants, animals, stories, and its people with honor and respect. Prior to beginning this evening's agenda, I would ask that each counselor who is present via this video conferencing to answer the roll call when I call your name. Deputy Mayor Summers.
Present.
Councillor Betty Ann Dunbar.
Present.
Councillor Jim Dunbar.
Present.
Councillor Stephen Wells.
Present.
Councillor H.P. Roy sends his regrets. Councillor Jennifer Pastorero.
Present.
Thank you. And thank you to all the construction companies and workers who participated in building the B. Judson Memorial Gazebo. Your efforts have all the signs of community commitment, and we applaud you. We'll keep you posted on the official opening. I know the residents have had the opportunity to see the improvements to our downtown and expanded community improvement projects. Ms. Bittner, Director of Facilities and Community Services, has provided council with a snapshot of the recipients for the CIP grant, and the freshening up of the storefront certainly enhances the appeal of our community. There will be more enhancements as our capital projects get underway. On a somber note, you may have noticed that the town flags are being flown at half-mast in recognition of the time served on council and numerous committees by Alex Solomon. Alex gave 100+% as a primary school teacher, community leader, and most know him for his friendly smile as he greeted everyone at the Palace Theatre. A celebration of Alex's life will be taking place at Sellers Park this Saturday. Details are on the Menard Beggs funeral website as well as in Elliott Lake today. Now, without further ado, turning to tonight's agenda. Has council had a chance to review the agenda? And there are no addendums to this agenda. I have a motion from Councillor J. Dunbar, seconded by Councillor B. Dunbar. Be it resolved that council approve the agenda as presented. All in favor of this motion? And that's carried. Thank you. And are there any declarations? Conflict of interest? Councillor B. Dunbar?
Yes, I am declaring a potential direct or indirect pecuniary interest on council agenda item number 13.8. Item title, Robin Horwath, re-trapping of the beaver, for the following reason that members of my immediate family are licensed trappers.
Thank you, Councillor Dunbar. Duly noted. And I would just ask that you turn off your mic, and we'll have Ms. Walsh give you a text when you can rejoin the meeting. Thank you for that declared. Are there any other conflicts of interest? Seeing none, we will move forward. We have a motion to adopt the previous minutes. This is moved by Councillor Pastorero, seconded by Deputy Mayor Summers. Be it resolved that council adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting of July 12th, 2021, and the minutes of the special council meeting of July 27th, 2021, as presented. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. And is there any business arising from those meeting minutes which council wishes to discuss? And seeing no hands, we will move forward. We have a public presentation tonight. We have Mr. Ben Weisner available to present on behalf of the Shervon Playground. Ben, the floor is yours.
Well, hi, good evening, Mayor Hagman and Council. I'm not sure if I'm doing this right.
We hear you just 5 by 5.
Oh, you do? Okay, good. Perfect. Anyway, first, thank you for allowing me to be part of your evening tonight. And I think you all have a copy of my presentation. So I'll just I'll go over it as presented. And I don't envy your jobs, not one bit. I wouldn't want to sit on your side of the table and have to make decisions, trying to keep everybody happy, keep money going where it should be going, trying to find funds for different things and keep the budget balanced. Now, if I was on your side of the table, one thing I would not do, and that's a capital not, and that is to defund or cut or remove or take away anything having to do with kids, especially during the pandemic. Schools were closed, arenas were closed, libraries were closed, parks were closed. And then, unfortunately, in some instances, children's lives were not the best. The schools and parks and libraries were their safe places and they were closed. Now, some options for sure, Ron, like first of all, it needs to stay as a park. We can't turn it into green space. There's a couple of pieces of non-compliant equipment in there and that should be removed. We make the swing set compliant. One side has 3 swings, it should only have 2. The last couple of weeks, I found out a whole bunch of playground things. And as I was preparing this, and once I had submitted it, I received a bunch of new information as well that I can share with you at a later date. So we make the swing set compliant. We add a freestanding spinner like item A. We add another play structure for 2 and 5-year-olds. And then we add another large play structure, item C. The best option for surface material, now I've looked at this and I'm sure there's people on staff that know more about it than I do, but the best surface material is fabricated wood fibers. And unlike the pea gravel, it's handicap accessible. You can ride over it with your arm, with your wheelchair. And I realize playground equipment is ridiculously expensive. I had no idea it was that much. In fact, had I known that, I might have opened up a playground manufacturing company. But anyway, we're organizing a small group to do some corporate fundraising. And hopefully we'll be successful and come up with at least $20,000 to offset the municipality's cost of the new equipment. And I'm saying through corporate donations, because our local businesses, they've been suffering quite enough during the pandemic. Just a little side note, I was in Sault Ste. Marie last weekend and stopped at Bellevue Park, and they have about 8 or 10 huge playground structures. They also have a really nice splash pad. Now, I realize Sault Ste. Marie has 20 times the population we have, but if we pick a location somewhere and said, well, we're going to develop this over time, and we put a little structure there this year, next year, council could budget some money and we could make it bigger, then we could make it bigger and make it bigger. In 10 years, we'd have something that would be just, this is besides Sherman, something that would be really special. And the best probably location for that would be at Berthenville Park. Because of the proximity to the highway, you'd have people stopping, kids would want to go and play in the park. People would stop here to eat, then they probably end up getting a room. And so that's another thing to discuss. So on another note, pertaining to the kids, there hasn't been any community days in the last couple of years. And we should have something to celebrate kids and just have a celebrating kids day. Today is a day just for kids. And some of the activities, like I mentioned, we can have some inflatables, bouncy castles, a large foam pool, jet ski rides, ice cream treats, cotton candy, hot dogs, pizza, soft drinks, clowns, face painting, pony rides. And then we cap the day off with a free movie for the kids at the Allan Bray Auditorium, all offered at no charge for the kids. And the location would be at Sellers Park. ideal spot. Now, I'd be happy to take this project on. And I need council to give me a budget of $5,000. Not that I would need any money now, but once we confirm a date, I would probably want to start organizing activities, and I might need some deposit money for different venues. But actually $5,000 is a small price to pay for making Celebrating Kids Day probably the best day ever in the lives of so many of our youngsters. And it's too late this year, maybe next year after Community Days, if we have one, and it could be an annual event. In closing, hopefully council will look favorably on these thoughts and suggestions and make the right decision, because it is all about the kids. They're the future, and whatever we as a community can do to make their lives better, we should. That's it in a nutshell. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben, for your presentation and for coming out tonight. Does council have any questions for Ben that they wish to ask? Councillor Wells? You're on mute.
There we go. It's been a while, right? Thank you very much, Mr. Weiser, for your presentation. You mentioned that you visited the Sault Ste. Marie Parks, and you referred in your presentation to the use of fabricated wood fiber as opposed to pea gravel. And I've always been under the impression that pea gravel is the best for safety around structures. So are they using fabricated wood in the Soo? And secondly, are there any concerns over time with the decay of the wood fiber?
There isn't any pea gravel in the playground in Sault Ste. Marie and Bellevue Park. The majority is fabricated wood fibers. And the reason they chose those, Councillor Wells, is because they're handicapped accessible. You can't drive your wheelchair on pea gravel. And a lot of the other playgrounds, they have the foam rubber, they're about 1 by 1, but they're very hard and they're very rigid. So, and cost-wise, the pea gravel and the fabricated wood fiber would probably be about the same, because the pea gravel, I think you have to go down 12 inches. And the wood fibers, I don't think that deep.
Are there any other questions from council for Mr. Weisner? Councillor Pastorero.
Thank you, sorry. Yeah, and just to add to that, under the Playground Safety Act, that pea gravel and the engineered wood chips, as well as the engineered plastic, which is in the majority of Sault Ste. Marie, which is the most expensive. Even with the engineered hard wood chips, you would have to maintain it constantly and replace it as needed. The depth requirement is based on how high the playground structures are. So the 12 inches is for the majority, even pea gravel or the wood. It's all based on how high your playground structure is in order to have the appropriate safety for falls for children. And I just want to say to Ben, thank you for your civic action. And unlike online that says we're all child-hating people that are very frugal, we're definitely out there looking for everyone's best interest. I do know that that park is a beautiful location, and we'll look to see what we can do in order to save it.
Perfect, thank you.
And are there any other questions for Ben from council tonight? Seeing none, Ben, once again, thank you so much for your presentation. We will take your suggestions to heart as we look at our 2022 budget deliberations, and we will keep in touch. Keep those communication lines going.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Hageman. Thank you.
And turning on to the introduction and consideration of administrative reports, 9.1, administration has given us an ongoing projects update as it relates to capital. Are there any questions in relation to this report? And seeing none, our CAO clerk has given us a report on Blind River Handy Transit Services. I have a motion from Councillor Wells, seconded by Councillor Dunbar. Whereas council realizes the need for handy transit bus services for residents of Blind River, therefore be it resolved that council direct the CAO to negotiate transition of the bus services with the North Shore Health Network, and that council direct the CAO to discuss with bus providers the management and day-to-day operations of the bus service to ensure the level of service is maintained or enhanced, and that council report back to and that the CAO report back to council on the determination of the service provider for council approval. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of this motion? And that is carried. Thank you. And from our Director of Facilities and Community Services, we have the Community Improvement Plan program results to date. Does council have any questions of Ms. Bittner on the CIP projects? And again, seeing no hands going up, I would like to compliment both the chamber and the applicants on refreshing our storefronts. They really do look nice with the facelifts that are going forward. So it's wonderful. And number 10, service delivery status, August 2021, the service delivery review update. Are there any questions on this? Seeing none, I would like to compliment the staff. When you think about a few years ago when we first started this project and how daunting all those recommendations were from KPMG, the staff have really been working hard to get forward on these recommendations into implementation, and we're seeing it each and every day as we use our eScribes and other software packages to make it more streamlined. So kudos to the staff. On presentation of committee reports, we have the CAO clerk with the town hall reopening. Yahoo! And has council anything to say on that report besides Yahoo? A lot of smiling faces. We miss each other, don't we? So it'll be nice when we can actually have a face-to-face. 11.1.2, the CAO clerk has given us the Muskoka chair policy, which was recommended by Corporate Services Committee. I have a motion from Deputy Mayor Summers, seconded by Councillor B. Dunbar. Be it resolved that council approve the Muskoka chair policy as amended and recommended by the Corporate Services Committee. Discussion? Questions? Seeing none, all in favor of this motion? And that's carried. Thank you. And from our treasurer, read the fire truck replacement options. I have a motion from Councillor Posterero, seconded by Councillor Wells. Be it resolved that Corporate Services Committee recommends to council that pre-budget approval for the 2022 be given to tender or purchase an aerial ladder truck, and that $400,000 of the NWMO Community Wellbeing Reserve be used towards the purchase price of the truck, and that the balance of the purchase price be debentured over 10 years. Discussion. Councillor J. Dunbar, followed by Councillor Wells. Councillor Dunbar.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to insist that Councillor Wells, since he, I think he second or moved this here motion. I'll concede and let him speak first, please.
Councillor Wells, go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Dunbar. Thank you, Mayor Hagman. I guess my question is for the treasurer. I know that we have the option of either fully funding the purchase of the proposed fire truck through a debenture, or using money from the NWMO Community Wellbeing Fund. And I believe that the original fund was $1 million. And we have another option where, actually, sorry, it's just sorry, I was just looking at the two options. The second option that has to do with the proposed ladder truck. I guess my question is, through our treasurer, is if we remove $400,000 from the NWMO fund, how much interest would we be losing in current dollars? I know that interest rates will change over time, but I do know that now we are receiving interest for the full investment of $1 million.
Sorry, I don't have that right in front of me, but we are currently earning about 7% on our high interest savings account, 0.7%. So what's that, $1 million times 0.7%? We'd be losing about almost half of that.
Councillor Wells, did you have a subsequent question to this?
I just one further question to the treasurer. Thank you, Mayor Hagman. So the interest that is now being generated by that fund, we were using that for our contribution to the Sudbury Health Center for the purchase of, I think it was a CAT scanner. Once that interest is no longer available, would that interest be earmarked for anything else, or would there be any concerns about losing half of that interest?
Through Madam Mayor, so the interest currently is being given to the North Shore Health Network. I believe 2022 is the final year of that $10,000. It was a total of $30,000 that council agreed to donate to that. There are no further commitments for the NWMO interest. If it's not spent, it is reinvested back into the reserve itself. So that will continue to grow the balance of the fund. And it would be up to council to determine as per the NWMO reserve policy, that's up to council to determine what that interest is spent on, if it is spent on anything at all.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Dan.
And Councillor Jay Dunbar, followed by Councillor Betty Ann Dunbar.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a couple of questions for Mr. Ramo and a follow-up question for Ms. Dent also. Kenny, by no means I pretend to be an expert on fire trucks, but I've done a little research. And I have a few questions here for you. So I just want to establish something here. You're wanting to replace our 1989 Telesquirt ladder truck. Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. With that being established, you know, I've looked at Telesquirts versus ladder. Are you planning on going after this specific truck, which would be called a ladder truck, or are you looking at another Telesquirt? Because what I've read is the Telesquirts are a little more maneuverable in tight spaces. Both the ladder truck and the Telesquirts can be both retrofitted, you know, on the end of their ladders, you know, to manually deliver water by firemen, or, you know, from the safety of the ground from a Telesquirt. And with saying that, just exactly will the length of this new ladder truck you're looking at, you're proposing to purchase be, and what was our old one? And, you know, I guess what I'm saying here, Ken, I'm looking for a less expensive alternative, and we didn't have any rooms here or any choices from you here. We got this 1.3. So I just want to go back, we'll step back up here and let me know what it was our old ladder truck length was.
through you, Madam Mayor, the old ladder truck was 75 feet maximum, which was stretching our capacity to get to some of the roofs in town. So what I'm looking at is a 100-foot ladder truck with the water squirt at the end to give us that extra distance to get higher up onto the roofs, to be able to get higher up onto Main Street's roofs. We just barely made it onto the arena roof when we were doing the snow from the, I guess it would be the southwest side where it's down lower. We just barely reached the roof. So this would give us the capacity to get higher up on that roof. So that's what I'm looking for. So the 1.3 would be the maximum that we would pay for the truck.
Have you provided us with any other alternatives? Have they come that way, like on, let's say, a 75-footer, or when we purchase other equipment, as an example, a grader, we're given a couple of choices here.
When we go out to tender, there will be choices for council to make the decision on what we're going to purchase. It's just the highest end that we will go is 1.3 million. I don't want to say it's going to be $1 million and then it comes in at 1.3, and then I have to come back to council again and say, I need another 300,000. So it's not saying that we're going to have to spend the whole 1.3. We might have to get up to that, but that would be the maximum for that truck.
Okay, thanks, Ken. That explains a lot.
And then the truck would be here for 20 years is what we have to think about.
Okay. And my follow-up was, excuse me, was similar to Councillor Wells, Sue, and I don't know exactly, like, I on the same lines, your math of the 7% on $1 million on an annual basis, but also that's times 10 years. And I guess, like, if we're making that now, I also had a concern on the $600,000 over the next 10 years versus the $1 million over the next 10 years. And it's something that I think is important that we know and understand here prior to going ahead with this here vote. You've already kind of explained it to Councillor Wells, but I do have concerns on that myself.
Over to Ms. Dent, followed by Councillor B. Dunbar, followed by Councillor J. Foster.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. So the lost interest is not just over 10 years. The lost interest is for eternity unless you're planning to replace the funds into the reserve account. So talking about 1 year versus 10 year versus, it doesn't make any sense. It is forever that interest is going to be lost. So I'm not sure what else you want me to, I mean, the alternative is to leave the NWML fund alone, debenture the entire thing, but that's going to increase the interest that we have to pay. That's going to increase the burden on our debt load and reduce our ability to borrow for other projects in the future. So using money from the NWMO reserve was a way to try and reduce the overall debt burden to the municipality.
Okay, thank you for that information, Sue. It makes it a little more clear.
And Councillor Betty Ann Dunbar.
I was just going to comment on the loss of income of the interest over, that length of time. I don't know. I'm kind of struggling with the using up that money and not having that interest coming in versus having to pay out over, however many years here.
And
I'm not sure that we should be using that money if we don't have to.
And back to Ms. Dent, and then over to Councillor Foster.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. So there is another alternative here. Council could choose to repay the money to the NWMO reserve over, for example, the life of the fire truck over 20 years or over 10 years, But again, that's going to increase the burden on the taxpayers for the cost of the truck. But it is another option if council wishes to repay the funds, the same as we are planning to repay the funds to the future projects reserve for the purchase of the first fire truck. Over 10 years, that fund will be reimbursed for the money that we're taking out to pay for the first fire truck. You could do something similar, but again, that's going to increase the burden on the taxpayers. But it is an option and something that you could consider.
Councillor Fosterero, then back to Councillor Jay Dunbar.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I'm just looking at this from the perspective that when we discussed this earlier, the sticker shock was there of the price of the fire truck, that it would be $1.2 to $1.3 million. But we were all afraid of the debenture of 5 years because that would be $250,000 on our taxpayers. So I like the frugality of this option, looking at it and saying, okay, we're going to debenture it over 10 years. Therefore, it's not such a tax burden on people that are already finding it hard to pay their taxes. And the loss of $29,000 a year at the $400,000 that we would be using, you have to counterbalance that. How much more can our population sustain to pay more taxes? Because if we are going to debenture the whole portion of the fire truck, that's going to be placed on the taxpayers. So I know that the loss of the 29,000 seems in perpetuity, like Ms. Dent said, but we have to look at how much can our taxpayers sustain. So this option of being a bit more frugal, extending it out to 10 years instead of 5 is a little less burden on our taxpayers. So I respect and thank you for that, Ms. Dent.
And to Ms. Dent for a response, and then over to Councillor Jay Dunbar.
Thank you, Mayor Hagman. So just to be clear, it would be $2,900, not $29,000. It's 0.7%, not 7%. Just so it's not that much of a sticker shock. The other alternative that I was just came to my mind while Councillor Posterero was speaking is it would be possible to, if we do debenture it over 10 years, then in the second 10 years of the fire truck's life, that same money that we were using to pay down the debt could then be used to replenish the fund at a future time. So just another option to perhaps repay the funds still within the lifetime of the truck.
0.7 is even better, even more frugal.
And over to Councillor Jay Dunbar, then followed by Councillor S. Wells, and followed by Deputy Mayor Summers.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ms. Dent, I have the fullest amount of respect for you and your job. And what I see here is whatever is the least amount to the taxpayers' burden, obviously suggested here, would be the way to go. Would you weigh in on I know you've given us 2 or 3 suggestions. Is it mathematically, is there one better than the other?
And the response, Ms. Dent, go ahead.
You, Madam Mayor, I don't know that there's one better than the other. There's going to be pros and cons to all of the options. I think it would be best at this time, though, for council to get an actual price for what this truck is going to cost, and that's going to involve going to tender. And once we have an accurate number for what we know we need to spend, then we can more critically analyze the funding options. That funding option doesn't need to be determined before we decide to buy the truck, but we can certainly look at a more generous number of options. These were just some samples just to show you a couple of ideas, but what we can do to fund the truck, the options are probably infinite, and we can certainly analyze them better once we have an actual price and see what the long-term impacts are going to be to the taxpayers of Blind River.
Thank you, Sue.
And Councillor Wells, followed by Deputy Mayor Summers.
Thank you, Mayor Hagman. I'm coming back to the original motion that we have on the table, and that there is a reference to using the $400,000 of the MWMO Community Wellbeing Reserve. But I do like the suggestion that over time, we reinvest money back into that fund. So if that is the intent, then I think that should be in this motion as well. That we should amend the motion to include that. I think our treasurer said over a 10-year period that we would replace the money in that fund just as we did with the other fund that we have. Or I misunderstood, but I think there should be a reference in the motion to that intent before we pass this motion.
So Councillor Wells, if I put, and the balance of the purchase price be debentured over 10 years with the option of paying back the NWMO Community Wellbeing Reserve, would that suffice?
Our treasurer gave me the impression that that would be not an option. But I think if we are going to do that, it should say in the motion that it would be just not an optional thing, but something that would actually be completed over time.
So the words I've used is with the option of paying back the NWMO Community Wellbeing Reserve. Are you satisfied? Are you okay with that? Okay, great. Thank you. And Deputy Mayor Summers.
Thank you, Mayor Hagman. When we discussed this earlier, using the NWMO money, which is community well-being, I thought we had agreed that no bigger well-being piece of equipment would we need than a fire truck. As far as paying the money back, we don't want to get ourselves so far into debt as far as how much money we're putting back. We still have to, based on our now my mind just went there. We would want to put money away each year towards replacing equipment. So we don't want to get ourselves so tied up into, you know, putting money here, and at the same time we're saying we can't raise the taxes too much. I think it's something that we need to consider at the time that we actually know what we are purchasing, what kind of price we're looking at, and then we can kind of decide how we want to go about making the payments, or how we want to actually deal with it, is my own feeling. I don't really think we need to get in the weeds here as far as whether or not we pay it back, because we still have time to look at that once we know what we're doing, right? Are we not just sort of saying this is kind of the amount that we want to be looking at, like budgeting for this piece of equipment? So I just wonder if we should just be letting it go at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Summers. And the word option is there, so we can opt in or opt out. And in hearing what you're saying too, the word asset management plan is a very important factor. I think that was the word you were looking for.
That was the one.
And as we look at all our assets, we don't want to be caught having to be in this position that we are in today. So to be able to move things in and out in a more streamlined fashion would certainly make it a lot easier on the taxpayer. And I believe Ms. Scott has something to say, followed by Councillor Jim Dunbar.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I was just looking for clarification. I'm hearing a little bit of two different things, but I think that Councillor Summers kind of summed up the thoughts I was going to put forward. But just with what Ms. Dent was saying in the beginning, was once the 10-year debenture was done, then the council at that time could look at replacing and replenishing the NWMO money. So it wouldn't be replenishing it at this time, it would be following the 10-year debenture being paid off, which would be a consideration for the council at that time, based on our capital budget planning and all of our budget policies that are in place. We could bring that forward to the council at that time to consider those options, if that is the intent that Councillor Wells had. I'm not sure. I was a little bit confused in there. I just want to make sure the resolution is correct.
So I do have the additional words say, with the option at that time of paying back the NWMO CWB reserve. Councillor Jay Dunbar, then Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, Councillor Summers kind of brings it to light here a little bit for me. You know, I want to do the best thing for the taxpayer, and also, as she mentioned, maybe we should just be getting on of paying our debt. And like, you know, sometimes it's better to pay off that visa and maybe not put anything aside for next month's savings, because it's better to get rid of that debt sooner than later. Yeah, I do see your point, Councillor Summers, than getting all tied up, but I do like the way the wording has come out now as the option of the time for obviously the next council or new council coming in. Anyway, thank you, Councillor Summers, for that enlightenment too.
And Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Mayor Hagman. Yeah, I was kind of thinking on my feet there and was a bit muddled. I do like the wording that our clerk CEO provided us with just a couple of minutes ago with the option of repaying. I think I could probably live with that one. I'm not exactly sure how that wording went, but it sounded good to me.
And it is duly captured with it saying, with the option at that time, as Ms. Scott indicated. Are there any other comments? With that being said, all in favor of this motion? And that is carried. Thank you. Moving on, I have Councillor Jay Dunbar gave us a notice of motion during last month's meeting. So I have moved by Councillor Jay Dunbar, seconded by Councillor Summers, whereas the Shervon Playground has been designated for decommission, and whereas there have been valid documented complaints from residents expressing their dissatisfaction over the decommissioning, and whereas there has been little information provided for the actual expense to taxpayers to continue this playground service, therefore be it resolved that council direct the CAO clerk to obtain a written staff report outlining the estimated expense to bring the old playground equipment and site up to current safety requirements, and that council receive the Shervon report prior to the 2022 budget deliberations, and that council, after receiving the report, reconsider the resolution 20-299 to decommission the Shervon Playground. Discussion. Councillor Jay Dunbar.
Thank you, Mayor Hagman. You know, initially I was in favor of the motion 2299, but after some further review of the reports and giving this resolution some further consideration, I believe my conclusion to remove the Shervon Playground equipment was hastily made. And before anyone else mentions it, I understand, you know, we're all elected officials here who have been granted the right to make decisions on behalf of the town citizens, and we can't be looking for input on everything that comes to council. Now, obviously, you know, this is going to slow down the municipal process. But in saying that, that doesn't mean we can't have exceptions. And I believe this one is we should take another look at. And my reasons being, council, you know, we didn't receive a final dollar figure as to, you know, what it would take to bring the playground into compliance, either by repair or replacement of non-standard equipment. We didn't discuss whether we needed a full implementation of equipment at the park, or, you know, that the equipment we can get along with less equipment, you know, for the time being. We hadn't conferred, obviously, or asked for any suggestions from any of the residents in the subdivision who this was going to affect. They had to band together and sign a petition. And most recently, you know, as we know tonight, the letter and the presentation from Mr. Wisner, which has produced some good ideas that I think we should move forward and look at as to how to save the little playground that, you know, has been an asset to the subdivision for over 60 years. It's been an asset that may entice families to move into this little pristine subdivision along the river. You know, it's a playground that takes care of the outdoor needs for the children and grandchildren who live in the subdivision and for the children in the surrounding areas of West Street and Fremont. And the idea that the kids who now play at Shervon Playground would have to cross a busy highway to the nearest playground doesn't sit too well with me either. So, Madam Mayor, it's my hope that council here tonight would support the notice of motion here before us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dunbar. Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Mayor Hagman. You're probably anticipating what I'm about to say, as I did when we considered this previous resolution last year. I would like to call for a recorded vote.
Thank you. And prior to going to a recorded vote, Councillor Fosterero.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I know that when we were in the thick of it, when we were debating it, many of these concerns were brought up, that the fact that this little subdivision is out on its own, and it is not, if someone doesn't have a vehicle, they can't access another playground. So I would love to see if there is a way to frugally save this playground, because it is a beautiful spot. My children, we do go and play there once in a while. I know there is some equipment that definitely wouldn't pass code, but following with the Playground Act, it would give us an opportunity to ensure that we have a beautiful little playground that is accessible. I love the fact that Mr. Wisner was researching, sorry, my phone just was researching and looking at what we need. The fiber chips, the wood fiber is quite expensive. But I know that playgrounds will have to be accessible moving forward. So this gives us an opportunity to take a look at what we can do to save a little park, keep the community happy. I know that when we were debating it before, we talked about demographics, and that that maybe at this time there weren't many children living in that subdivision, but we have to be mindful that there's grandparents and things like that that like to have kids over. So they might not live there, but they may play there. So yeah, so much like Councillor Dunbar, I myself voted for the original one, but definitely we can reconsider and see if we can save it, if it's possible.
Thank you. Are there any other comments, questions? Seeing none, I will turn the floor over to Ms. Scott to do the recorded vote.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Summers,
In favor.
Councillor B.A. Dunbar,
In favor.
Councillor J. Dunbar. You're on mute.
In favor.
Thank you. Councillor S. Wells,
In favor.
Councillor J. Posterero,
In favor.
Mayor Hagman.
In favor.
That's carried.
Thank you. Moving on to 13.2, we have a motion from the City of Vaughan raising the legal age for licensed drivers from 16 to 18. This motion is moved by Deputy Mayor Summers seconded by Councillor B. Dunbar. Be it resolved that council support the city of Vaughan with a request that the provincial government consider raising the current minimum driving age for licensed G1 operators of motor vehicles in Ontario from 16 to 18 years of age, and that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to the Premier, the Minister of Transportation, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, MP, MPP, and the City of Vaughan. And this is open for discussion. Deputy Mayor Summers, followed by Councillor Pastorero, followed by Councillor Wells.
Seeing as I was the mover, I just wanted to just bring up the fact that I will not support this. I don't feel that that it's warranted at this time. The some of the reasoning that they used there were something that was a terrible thing, but if we chose to change the laws on every incident that happens regarding something that isn't like it isn't a good thing, I don't really know where we would be. I think 16, I think the graduated license system works quite well, and I believe that it should be left that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Pastorero.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to echo the sentiments of Councillor Summers. I think the faulty logic and reasoning behind this is just a slippery slope. Just because there was an accident recently with a 16-year-old, I find it ironic that it's coming from Vaughan, where they had an older gentleman that was a wealthy businessman that made one of the most horrific, tragic mistakes of his life and killed a family. So why choose this 16-year-old incident, which again is tragic? But changing the driving age is not going to fix stupidity. It's not going to fix those that feel entitled to get behind the wheel and do dangerous things. There is, like Councillor Summers said, the graduate license program, where a G1, you must have a mature driver with you. And there are severe restrictions. And even when you go up to your G2, there's severe restrictions. For a licensed driver to be fully licensed and unrestricted, you are 18. So I find the logic behind this motion is faulty, and I will not be supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor Pastorero. Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Mayor Hagman. I think the other two councillors have echoed my sentiments. It's just that it's not the age of the person behind the wheel, but the person behind the wheel. It all depends on good driver safety responsibility.
Thank you. Are there any other comments on this motion? Seeing none, I too feel the same way as Deputy Mayor Summers, Councillor Pastorero, and Councillor Wells in defeating this motion. I will ask council two questions, all in favor or all opposed. So the first one is all in favor of this motion, please raise your hands. And all against this motion, please raise your hands. And this motion is defeated. Thank you. Reminds me of driving with my granddaughter, and she's 16, and I feel so safe with her. So on to 13.3, July 12th, we received a communication from the Township of Adelaide Metcalfe banning unencapsulated polystyrene foam. This motion is moved by Councillor Wells, seconded by Councillor Pastorero, whereas the Ontario Member of Parliament, Norm Miller, has tabled Private Members Bill 228, Keeping Polystyrene Out of Ontario's Lakes and Rivers Act. The bill requires persons who sell, offer to sell, or construct floating docks, floating platforms, or buoys to ensure that any expanded or extruded polystyrene in the dock, platform, or buoy is fully encapsulated. And whereas unencapsulated polystyrene foam used in float docks breaks up with weathering, scattering fragments big and small that end up as a lot of ugly litter in our water and shorelines. Also, polystyrene foam as a plastic never really goes away, but it can degrade into microplastics less than 5 millimeters in size and pose a threat to aquatic wildlife who could ingest it. Therefore, be it resolved that council support the Township of Archipelago regarding the banning the use of unencapsulated polystyrene foam. Discussion. Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Mayor Hagman. I wanted to move this motion obviously, because I agree with it. We have significant problems with plastics entering the environment. And obviously, as the plastics break down into microplastics, they will enter the food chain. So I think that it's a fairly obvious thing that we should try to restrict the use of plastics and polystyrene, particularly in the freshwater environment in which we live.
Are there any comments on this motion? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. We received correspondence from the Township of Georgian Bay, Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada's calls to action. I have a motion from Councillor B. Dunbar, seconded by Councillor J. Dunbar. Whereas only 10 items in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada calls to actions have been completed since its creation, therefore be it resolved that Council fully supports the Township of Georgian Bay and requests the implementation of the remaining 84 calls to action, and that this resolution be forwarded to the Township of Georgian Bay, MPP, the Premier of Ontario, and the Prime Minister of Canada. Discussion? All in favor of this motion? And that's carried. Thank you. And from the Municipality of Cavendry, primary residence capital gains tax. It's a long one. Ready? This is moved by Councillor Summers, seconded by Councillor Posterero. Whereas primary residences are currently exempt from a capital gains tax, and whereas currently secondary and additional non-primary properties are subject to capital gains, and whereas the federal government is currently looking into a primary residence capital gains tax, as they have recognized that affordable housing has become a serious issue in Canada, and whereas small communities are seeing unprecedented higher selling prices that are outspacing prices in larger cities, and whereas many hardworking Canadians who have only a primary residence with no additional non-primary homes count on their home as equity as financial aid to apply to upsizing or downsizing their home, depending on their personal situation. And whereas a change in taxation to primary residences would be a significant blow to Canadians and would create an unfair two-tiered taxation, which could lead to depleted savings, intergenerational disparities among diverse groups such as seniors who may have a significant portion of their savings vested in their primary residence, as well as reducing the ability of home ownership, thereby a further higher need for rentals. And whereas the federal government could look at other means to slow down the rapidly escalating household costs to improve household affordability, therefore be it resolved that Council support the municipality of Kelvin and the town of Fort Erie as they lobby the federal government to cease further consideration of eliminating capital gains tax exemptions on primary residence, and that this resolution be forwarded to the Right Honorable Justin Trudeau, the Honorable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, and the municipality of Kelvin. Discussion? All in favor of this motion? And that's carried. Thank you. The next motion is on a donation request, and I would ask Council to think about the amount that they would like to donate. We have, our budget has 3,200 in it. There is a recommendation of 200. The motion reads, moved by Councillor Wells, seconded by Councillor J. Dunbar. Be it resolved that Council authorize a donation in the amount of, to be discussed, to Water First NGO, an organization committed to seeing sustainable, clean drinking water come to Indigenous communities throughout Canada. Discussion. Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Mayor Hagman. I wanted to move this motion because, as we all know, almost on a daily basis, we're discovering new and sometimes horrific information about the residential school system. And we have two younger people here that have taken on the initiative of raising money to be committed to providing better clean drinking water for Indigenous communities. And I want to commend them for their efforts, and I would certainly endorse a contribution of $200.
And are there any other points of discussion from council? Seeing none, the $200 amount is being entered into this motion as I speak. And all in favor of this motion? And that is carried. Thank you. This next motion is also being moved by Councillor Wills, seconded by Deputy Mayor Summers. Whereas the current affordable housing crisis in Canada and the quality of life implications caused by addiction, drug and opioid use, and mental health issues are impacting communities in Canada and around the world. And whereas citizens in many communities are alarmed by the increase in homelessness, needles discarded in public spaces, visible signs of illegal activities, and are disillusioned with the justice system response. And whereas policing and the justice system is not the solution to homelessness and addiction or the effective use of public funds, and whereas public health initiatives and programs aimed at addiction are provided by multiple ministries and agencies and clearly inadequate, and new long-term solutions are required. And whereas many of the programs and attempts from different agencies, government organizations, and ministry service providers have created a disjointed delivery system. Therefore, be it resolved that Council supports the City of Woodstock with their call to the Honourable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, to bring together the Ministry of the Attorney General, the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services to immediately work together on both short and long-term solutions, complete with funding to take proper responsibility and action to address the affordable housing, homelessness, and addiction crisis, and that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to the MPP, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and the City of Woodstock. Discussion. Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Mayor Hagman. I was drawn to this motion and wanted to move it for two specific reasons. I am aware that even in Blind River, we have concerns about the lack of affordable housing. And although it may not be apparent to everyone, we also deal with the issue of homelessness in our community, what I sometimes like to refer as the invisible homeless. But when we have people in our community living in motel rooms and not a home, I consider that to be indicative of homelessness as well. So that's what brought me to act as the mover of this motion.
And thank you for that. Councillor Pastorero.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And to further Councillor Wells' sentiments is definitely Blind River all across Ontario, all across Canada, along with the real estate prices going skyrocketing, so are rental rates. And rental rates are beyond the reach of many. And so we are going to see an increase in homelessness and the invisible homeless, couch surfing, just, you know, it's growing. And I know that organizations are trying to do the best they can, but they can't keep up, and wait lists are years for affordable housing. So definitely I support any motion that's striving towards more affordable housing and access for those that need it.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Seeing none. All in favor of this motion? And that is carried. And at this time, I would ask Councillor Betty Ann Dunbar to turn off her camera, and you will be getting a message to come back on. This next one is regarding the trapping with Robin Horwath. This motion is moved by Councillor Wells, seconded by Councillor Jay Dunbar. Be it resolved that Council authorize the CAO clerk to sign the 2021-2022 contract with Robin Horwath for the trapping of beavers at the mill pond to where the canal meets the Mississauga River at no cost to the town. Discussion? Councillor Jay Dunbar.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't have any problem with this here resolution. I'm just seeking information on this here process. Since I've been on council, I've seen the duties and well done from Mr. Horwath over at the Mill Pond. But I'm inquiring on the process, like, are there other trappers obviously in town? Like, how do they go about applying to do this here job for the town?
And Ms. Scott?
Through you, Madam Mayor. This process has historically, Mr. Horwath has sent in a letter to council for the last 20 years and obtained permission. I've not seen any other interest. That being said, I'm not sure that it was ever sent out to circulation. And my suggestion would be for the 2022-2023 contract year that it be sent out to the Trappers Association within Blind River area for circulation to gauge their interest in requesting this contract. I will admit I'm not familiar with how the trade works, so I would have to do some investigation into that to see what the trap lines and how those boundaries work for the members of the Trappers Association. But I would happily reach out to them for input in that for our 2022-2023 request.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katie.
Any other questions on this motion? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried. And Councillor B. Denbar may be invited back to join this meeting, and I'll just wait until she signs on. Welcome back, Councillor Dunbar. We've moved on to the board representative appointment for Elnos, and we certainly needed you here. I have a motion from Councillor Wells, seconded by Deputy Mayor Summers. Be it resolved that council nominate Councillor B. Dunbar as a Blind River representative on the Elnos board for the 2021-2022 term, and prior to asking for a vote from council. Councillor B. Dunbar, would you accept this nomination?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
It would be an honor.
Thank you. And we are honored to have you as our representative. All in favor of this motion? And that is carried. Thank you. And moving on to correspondence and information. I have a motion, I have no motion, sorry. We have information from the Solicitor General, re-pets in unattended vehicles. I believe this is something that seems to come up every year. Are there any questions from council on this correspondence? Seeing none, we also have correspondence from H&M Coffee Broadband Internet Update. Any comments from council? Councillor J. Dunbar.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I read through the H&M Coffee information, and I'm sure we're all aware, I don't know if the public is, but H&M Coffee has received the grant from the federal and provincial government. So that's a positive step for high-speed broadband going forward for the area, hopefully. There's a lot of work yet to be done, but congratulations to George and the coffee H&M Coffee Group for willing to take this year project on.
For that. Councillor Posterero.
Sorry, my mute wasn't coming off. There we go. Thank you. I was just wondering, as I was reading this, it kind of felt like there should have been a motion to attach, because it was like saying, okay, well, now's the time to pony up, talk about how much money you're going to invest in this H&M Coffee. So I'm just wondering, is there going to be a motion forthcoming for consideration? I know many of our sentiments were that we were supporting it in principle. However, I was just surprised that with that correspondence that there wasn't a motion attached to it.
And Ms. Scott has her hand up.
Thank you, Mayor Hagman. Through you to Councillor Pastorero. We did receive an email today from Mr. Bilodeau with regard to this announcement, and they are looking for a financial contribution now. So they would be looking for a financial contribution from the municipality to buy into the infrastructure to be placed in the municipalities. I've reached out to him for further information on that. Exactly what is he looking for, exactly what is the corporation looking for from each municipality, to spell it out for us so that council has that information to determine on whether or not you want to buy into it. And then what happens if you don't? Does it bypass Blind River? So I've asked all of those questions and I'm awaiting a response. So if the timeline is too tight, I would request a special meeting of council to discuss that.
Councillor Pastorero, and then to Councillor B. Dunbar.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So follow up to that, like in the document it was talking about, there was two options, either 2.5 million or 5 million for Blind River alone. And I think something that substantial needs public consultation. And I know my views on this subject, but I think something that substantial, we would need to consult the public in general.
Thank you. And Councillor B. Dunbar.
A request that I would make, that I would want to see in writing, would be their business plan. We haven't seen an updated business plan for how this is going to move forward. And I think in order for us to make informed decisions, we need to have that business plan. We need to be able to see that business plan. So that would be my request, that we would ask H&M Copy for information on their business plan.
Thank you, Councillor Dunbar. And Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Mayor Hagman. Attached to that email is Appendix A, which gives us a prorated breakdown in terms of municipal contribution across the region, option 1 or option 2. And I think option 2 is probably the one that we're looking at, considering that the federal and provincial funding has come forward. So at least that gives us a dollar figure to consider. One concern that I would have, and I'm assuming obviously if this is going to move fairly quickly, we would probably want something to go to the Finance Committee for consideration. But one concern I have is that this is based on contribution, prorated contribution from all of the municipalities in Appendix A. And I'm just wondering what happens if some of those municipalities decide not to contribute. Obviously, the other communities that do contribute would probably have to contribute more to make up the shortfall. So I think I agree with Councillor B.A. Dunbar. I think we should have more information that we could take to the Finance Committee when the time comes.
Are there any other comments? Seeing none, moving on to 14.3, the North Shore Power Group Board Minutes from June 6, 2021. Are there any questions on this correspondence? Seeing none, July 19th, 2021, the North Shore Power Group Town Generating Station Report. Are there any questions on this report? 14.5, July 13th, Mike Mantha, read the Ontario Fire Training College closure and the Solicitor General's response to that closure. Deputy Mayor Summers.
I was just wondering what Mr. Ramo had to say about this situation, if it has anything that causes us some grief by having this closed. So I was just wondering if he could let us know what he thinks.
And Mr. Ramo.
Actually, with through you, Madam Mayor, actually with all of the new online training packages that they're going to offer, they're opening up a whole new areas for us. We have some of our new firefighters that are going to be attending Sudbury, I believe at the end of this month for live fire training. That wasn't available before. It was very hard for us to take courses down at the fire college because they were during the week, which meant the firefighters had to take time off for holidays to be able to attend the fire college. So with it closing, yes, it is sad, but it is opening up many more opportunities for smaller departments to get their training online.
Thank you.
And I thank you as well. August 3rd, 2021, we have the Invasive Species Center Boot Brush Station Contest news with congratulations to Ms. Bittner for her application. And we look forward to brushing our boots and cleaning them off so that we don't have invasive species going from one area to another. Reminds me of going to New Zealand and you had to put your boots through a wash cycle before you were allowed to take them through customs. So here we go. I received no notices of motion. And so moving on to the introduction and consideration of bylaws. I have a motion from Councillor B. Dunbar, seconded by Councillor J. Dunbar. Be it resolved that council authorize the mayor and CAO clerk to sign bylaw 21-40, being a bylaw of the corporation of the town of Blind River to deem a registered plan of subdivision not to be a registered plan of subdivision, was passed in open council this 9th day of August, 2021. All in favor of this motion? And that is carried. And I have a motion from Councillor Pastorero, moved by and seconded by Councillor J. Dunbar. Be it resolved that council authorize the mayor and CAO clerk to sign bylaw 21-41, being a bylaw to enter into an agreement with Algoma Bioseptic Technologies, Inc. for the municipal landfill drainage improvements project, was passed in open council this 9th day of August, 2021. All in favor of this motion? And that is carried. And I have a motion brought forward, moved by Councillor B. Dunbar, seconded by Councillor Wells. Be it resolved that council authorize the mayor and CAO clerk to sign bylaw 21-42, being a bylaw to enter into an agreement with Lotta Water Technical Services, Inc. for the well rehabilitation 2021 project, was passed in open council this 9th day of August, 2021. All in favor of this motion? And that's carried. Thank you. Next motion is from Deputy Mayor Summers, seconded by Councillor J. Pastorero. Be it resolved that council authorize the mayor and CAO clerk to sign bylaw 21-43, being a bylaw of the corporation of the town of Blind River to adopt the minutes of the meeting of August 9th, 2021, was passed in open council this 9th day of August, 2021. All in favor of this motion? And that is carried. And last but not least, I have a motion moved by Councillor J. Dunbar, seconded by Councillor J. Pastorero. Be it resolved that council adjourn at 8:18 p.m. All in favor of this motion? And that is carried. Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening. Try and cool off if you don't have air conditioning. And yoo-hoo, again, next month, we'll be seeing each other in person. Again, thank you and good night.